Hi, it's Patrick here from BFS Wargaming. Welcome to episode 2 of How to Play Kill Team. So in this episode we are going to look at setting up the board, the size of the board, and we're also going to be looking at the terrain and the effects of the terrain, and also we're going to take a look at the scouting phase and the command points and tactics. So all the missions are in the core manual. Again, like I said in episode 1, you've got the open play, narrative play, and match play. So you actually have missions, different missions for each of these. So there'll be some open play missions, there'll be some narrative missions, and there'll also be some match play missions. So we're going to take a look at an open play mission, the first one in the core manual, and we're going to look at how to set that up with the deployment zones, and we'll go from there. So the mission we've chosen is Covert War, which is the first one in the core manual. So in all the missions, you can play, well, I think pretty much all the missions, you can either play from 2 to 4 players. So it's a great little skirmish game which you can have a quick game between 2 people, or you can, if there's more of you there, you can play between 4 of you. You just slightly have to change some of the ways you do things. So for instance, with Covert War, the deployment zone, you literally just split down the middle. So I've just put some dice down the middle to show the deployment zone, and then you have to deploy 6 inches back from that line. Now, if there was 4 players, all you would do is you would split it down the other way as well. So you would split it into quarters, and again, you'd just deploy 6 inches away from the line. So you can set up the terrain how you want. So you place it all out first, you set it up, and then you put out the deployment zones. You then roll for strategic advantage. So each player rolls 2d6, and whoever gets highest gets strategic advantage, and then so on down, depending on whether you're playing 2 or 4 players. And then literally the missions are set out really well in the core manual, so they talk you through step by step what you have to do. So in the Covert War mission, you each place an objective marker. So it has to be 8 inches away from any other objective marker and 6 inches away from the board edge. So the person with the strategic advantage will place theirs first. We're then going to go on to the scouting phase. Now the scouting phase is something that's optional. So it makes the game a little bit more complicated and a little bit more in depth. So if you want to skip past this, then no problem, just skip past it. I would even recommend to skip past it for your first few games, so you can get used to it. We will talk briefly about the scouting phase, just so you know if you do want to play it. So the scouting phase. The scouting phase is something that you do before you start deployment. So what you do is, depending on how many people there are, if there's either 2, 3 or 4, you each pick a different thing to do in the scouting phase, or you can pick the same thing. You have to pick it secretly. So there are 6 things you can do. You can scout out enemy forces, you can plant traps, you can disarm traps, you can scout out terrain, you can take forward positions, and you can eliminate sentries. Now, the scouting phase is something that will make the deployment and the beginning of the game that little bit more interesting. And like I said, it's not something I would recommend to do when you very first start playing, but you might want to start adding this in just to make things a little bit more interesting. So basically, you each pick one from 1 to 6. You use a dice, d6, you put your hand over it once you've chosen a number, and then you all reveal at the same time what number you've chosen from 1 to 6, and that will obviously correspond with one of the things you can do in the scouting phase. Now, some of the things in the scouting phase are things you can do which are aggressive. Some things are defensive. There are some things that you can sort of try and cancel out. For instance, one is you can plant traps, the other one is you can disarm traps. So you can almost try and preempt what you think your opponent is going to do. I won't go into detail, like I said, about what each one does, because it's quite a lot of information, and you'll obviously be able to read that in the core manual. But I think it's a great little extra to add into the missions. Once you get more comfortable with playing Kill Team and you get comfortable with the rules, then this is a great thing you can add in as a little extra. So once the scouting phase is complete, you then start, you do deployment. So you follow the rules of the mission for deployment. Once that's done, you also have on the mission, it will tell you how many turns that the game lasts for, and then it will also tell you the victory conditions. So each mission has different victory conditions. And in fact, Covert War actually has a choice of 3 victory conditions, and you can roll a D3, which you just roll a D6, and then 1 or 2 is 1, 3 or 4 is 2, and 5 or 6 is 3. So you roll a D3 and you decide, and that will randomly determine what the victory condition is. So although you don't need masses of terrain is very important in Kill Team. So I'll go on to explain it a little bit more in the shooting phase when we do the video for the shooting phase, but basically terrain can make your models harder to hit. So they'll basically have to roll higher on the dice. The attackers will have to roll higher on the dice to hit your model. So although you don't need loads of it, terrain is very, very important to make the game even. So we're just going to go on now to talk about command points and tactics. So command points, you get a command point every turn, 1 command point, and then you'll get another command point if your leader is on the table. So if your leader is on the table, you get another command point. So you can get up to 2 command points per turn, and you can use what are called tactics. So tactics, basically, they can buff your models to make them maybe shoot better, maybe they can make them fight again. So there's loads of different things, and the tactics are specific. There's some that are anyone can use, and then there are tactics that are specific to your faction. Thanks for watching episode 2 of How to Play Kill Team. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. The links for the other videos will be in the description, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.